Now, tug of war continues in the Israeli cabinet over U.S. President Joe Biden's ceasefire deal.
Right, even this as the U.S. has expressed confidence that Israel would agree to a deal if Hamas gives the nod.
Now, U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says that U.S. intelligence now believes that Hamas has been militarily degraded to the extent that it can no longer repeat an October 7th-like attack on Israel. But this still does not mean that Hamas does not represent a viable threat to the Israeli people. Kirby said that the United States has every expectation that Israel would say yes to the ceasefire deal. He added that the mediators are waiting for an official response from Hamas.
Meanwhile, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has said that Israel would not accept Hamas continuing to rule Gaza at any stage. He added that Tel Aviv is working on a different government for Gaza.
At any stage in any process to end the war, we will not accept the rule of Hamas as the authority in Gaza.
Now, Biden's three-part proposal begins with a 6-week ceasefire that includes troop withdrawal from the populated areas of Gaza. The first phase also includes the exchange of Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners and delivery of 600 aid trucks every day. In the second phase, Israel and Hamas could negotiate terms for a permanent end to hostilities. And the final phase involves a major reconstruction plan for Gaza with international support.
Netanyahu insists that his conditions for ending the war, that majorly includes total destruction of Hamas, have not changed, and that the deal is a non-starter until Hamas is completely dismantled.
The families of the hostages rallied outside Prime Minister Netanyahu's office calling for implementation of the deal.
Thousands attended a parade in the New York City calling for immediate release of hostages held in Gaza.
Far-right Israeli ministers are threatening to bring down Netanyahu's governing coalition if the deal is accepted. Last week, Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz's centrist party warned that it will dissolve the Knesset. According to a new poll, if elections were held today in Israel, Gantz's National Unity Party would win 27 seats and will take the majority in the Knesset. Netanyahu's Likud party will be left with just 21 Knesset members ahead instead of the current 32. While the Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid's party, Yesh Atid, would win 14 seats and become the country's third largest party.
Netanyahu has been struggling to avoid coalition implosion over Gaza's ceasefire plan. Hardliners Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir threatened to pull the government down if the deal was accepted. Gvir said that truce would be a victory for terror and a security danger to Israel. Smotrich opposed the return of displaced Gazans to Gaza's north, and he said, and I'm quoting him here, wholesale release of terrorists.
On the other hand, Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid said that he will back Netanyahu if his far-right coalition partners quit. Meanwhile, on the ground, fighting between Hamas and the IDF continues to rage on.
Israeli army tanks were seen moving along the border. The military struck 30 terror targets over the past day, including Hamas's weapon storage facilities.
At least 5 people, including a young girl, were killed in an Israeli airstrike on central Gaza. Their bodies were brought to the morgue at the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Bala. Over 36,430 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza by Israeli ground offensive. UN Palestine Aid Agency says that in Rafah, all 36 shelters are empty as people were forced to flee due to Israel's continuing military operations. Now for more on this, we're being joined by Adrian Kalmel, who is a fellow at the Arabian Peninsula Institute. He is also a scholar in matters of terrorism in West Asia and is joining us live from New York. So thank you so much for joining us on World DNA.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, I want to begin by asking you, the divisions within the Israeli government are all too evident. Netanyahu faces pressure from hardliners within his cabinet, of course. What is your assessment on the deal being put forth? Would you say it's already at a stalemate?
I would say it's at a stalemate. This, as Netanyahu said, this deal is a non-starter. I look at it as this is the American administration putting tremendous political pressure, both from a world perspective and internally. There has been no secret that there is not a whole lot of love between the Netanyahu government and the Biden administration, and that dates back to when he was a vice president. Biden put forward a three-part plan. There's a fourth part missing, and that is the dismantling, removal of Hamas. And they need to be defeated. Israel cannot agree to this because what the Biden administration is doing, and you mentioned it in the Kirby's statements leading into the segment, that he believes that they've been degraded enough, that they've had enough of their capacity diminished, that they cannot reconstitute themselves to fight another day. And this just simply is false. We learned this. This is the same language we heard about Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, that they've been degraded, defeated, on the road to defeat, but they're stronger than they ever have been. And Hamas, if you look at them, they also have state sponsorship from both Qatar and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Their top leadership is sheltered in other countries, so they can reconstitute themselves.
Right, Mr. Callum will speak of how this is clearly political pressure from America, and Biden unveiled the 3-point peace plan. It is also an election year in the United States of America. If this deal does not go through, what sort of implications do you think it will have for U.S. President Joe Biden?
That's a great question, and it's really difficult for me to tell. I think he's playing with fire when you're putting regional security and national security, when you look at the scenes that are playing out in streets across the United States. When you're putting your own political objectives and your own reelection campaign, and really it focuses on one state, it's Michigan. To do that, and dismiss all the complications. It's rather despicable, I must say. And I'll go back. I want to make one more point on the casualty numbers here. United States put this pressure on the Biden administration. I mean, on the Bibi government, the Israeli government. The demand was, we keep on hearing numbers of 30,000, 40,000. They're coming from the Hamas Ministry of Health. What we're not focusing on is the inordinate effort that the IDF has taken to minimize casualties. We're talking about one civilian to one Hamas fighter to 1.4 civilians. Now, to compare this, I'll just give you one battle, the battle for Mosul, the last battle to take ISIS. You had 600 ISIS fighters going up against roughly, and you had a trapped civilian population of 60,000 people. And what did they do? They leveled the city. So that was a 60-to-1 death ratio. One terrorist to 60 civilians. So there is a double standard that is being applied here. And putting political pressure on Israel is not the way to go about this. It's not the way to bring comity to the Middle East.
Sir, with that being said, you did touch on this earlier as well, as you mentioned, of course. Israel too is adamant that it wants the complete destruction of Hamas. At a time when there is, of course, growing anger and uproar, of course, regarding the hostages to be brought back, the rising humanitarian death toll, and the famine-like situation that Gaza faces right now. To what end do you think Israel can justify its ground operations?
Well, I think they have to justify the ground operations on a couple of things. Number one, it's always been about getting the hostages back. Hamas could have stopped this from day one by just releasing the hostages. They've refused to. They've rejected every single deal. Now the question is, are any of the hostages that are remaining, are they even still alive? They've been held for over 232 days now, many of them with no aid to healthcare, severe injuries. We're finding dead bodies inside of tunnels where they were hidden inside Rafah. So I think part of the problem is the political will. If you look at the United States, you look at the countries or Egypt next door, everybody's a little concerned what they might find in Rafah as far as hostages, rat lines, moving Hamas fighters out of Rafah. So that goes back to the reconstituting of Hamas, that they can't fight again. And my argument is that this is, you don't understand terrorism if you think that Hamas is destroyed here or that they can't easily reconstitute themselves.
Right, so I guess that is the battle right now, that Hamas ideology still remains very much intact, and it is the humanitarian situation that is getting increasingly dire. That being said, Mr. Calmel, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA with your insights on this.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a nice day.